There have been hundreds of video game consoles that hit the market and fizzled out, and most of them died for a good reason. Bad games, horrible controls, intense competition, and bad marketing will often kill the sales of an otherwise crappy console. Hello, and welcome friends. In today's video, we discuss the top 10 best video gaming consoles that bombed. Number 10. Neo Geo. The Neo Geo was one of the most popular arcade cabinets of the early 1990s, thanks to the ability to play more than one game on them. Its cabinet featured 6 games, while others had 4, 2, or just 1. The system had 24-bit graphics and some of the best games of the era, including Fatal Fury, Metal Slug, Samurai Showdown, and The King of Fighters. The problem with the home console was that it cost as much as the arcade cabinet's hardware. It used the same cartridges that went into the cabs, and the cost kept most consumers away. Number 9. Nokia N-Gage. The Nokia N-Gage is a bit of an outlier on this list because it wasn't created by a traditional video game company. The system was developed by Nokia. The N-Gage featured a total of 58 games throughout its worldwide release. Players could play Call of Duty, Pathway to Glory, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and many more familiar titles on the device. For the time, it was an impressive console, though it had some technical problems. And never managed to do well in the market. In fact, it sold horribly, and only around 3 million systems were sold. Ultimately, the device failed for a variety of reasons. Number 8. Atari Lynx. When Atari was still producing home video game consoles, the company jumped into the 4th generation handheld market with an innovative device called the Atari Lynx. The system was the first to feature a color LCD display. The Lynx also featured an amazing layout, so a left-handed player could flip it and use the D-pad with their dominant hand. Still, it failed to capture much of the market's attention. This was primarily due to the Nintendo's Game Boy. Game Boy was the absolute dominance of the marketplace at the time, and the other reason for its failure was its limited library of only 75 games as compared to the Nintendo's Game Boy. Number 7. Nintendo Wii U. The Wii U was designed as the successor to the Wii. It integrated many of the same functions with one big addition. The inclusion of a Wii U gamepad, which included a touchscreen and all the control buttons found on the other controllers, was meant to, once more, revolutionize gaming. But, the Wii U failed to recapture the excitement of the video game community the Wii enjoyed, and its sales suffered considerably. The reasons for its failure are a weak lineup of launch titles, lack of market interest, limited third-party support, scant internal memory, and technical limitations compared to its competition. Number 6. Sega Game Gear. Sega entered the handheld gaming wars with the Sega Game Gear, a system with an 8-bit fully backlit color screen. The Game Gear was technologically superior to the Game Boy. The Game Gear had everything over its Nintendo competition. But, when it launched, the Game Gear had 6 games, which wasn't great. The Game Boy's library includes some 40+ games, and while not every one of them is exceptional, there are hundreds of great titles on the system. The power drain of Game Gear's display had on the system and the limited battery life made the Game Boy a much better option as compared to Sega Game Gear. Number 5. NEC TurboGrafx 16, 1987. The 4th generation TG16 launched in 1989. It is designed by the Hudson Soft, and it was also known as PC Engine outside North America. The system's games were coded onto small HuCards, which were a little thicker, and a credit card. The TurboGrafx 16 featured the release of several impressive games, including Cat Ash, Bonk's Adventure, Legendary Axe, Devil's Crush, and many more. Still, the TG16 failed to gain a hold in the North American market, primarily due to a terrible marketing strategy. And it saw some upgrades via a CD-ROM attachment during its life, which made it was too expensive for most consumers. Number 4. Neo Geo Pocket Color. SNK developed and released the Neo Geo Pocket Color in 1998 in Japan. The system was superior to many of the consoles introduced in the 6th generation. The Neo Geo Pocket Color's 16-bit graphics, highly accurate controls, and 40-hour battery life made it innovative and accessible. The system launched with 14 relatively solid titles, and it initially did well in the US and Japan. Unfortunately, it saw limited retail support in the States, and there were issues with third-party software development. Financial issues with the company ultimately led to the console's demise. Production ended after less than a year. Only 2 million units sold at the end of its run, which brought an end to SNK's video game console production. Number 3. Sega Master System. The main competition for the NES market share was the Sega Master System. This 8-bit console was developed and released in 1985 in Japan. It hit the American market the following year and was followed by a release in Europe and Brazil. It had a pair of 3D glasses, a light gun, and other attachments that made it competitive. Unfortunately, it wasn't competitive enough, and the NES absolutely dominated the market throughout its run. The reasons that didn't save the system from losing the console war against Nintendo are, the SMS library of games was meager in comparison, they tend to be hard to understand. Number 2. PlayStation Vita. The second attempt at dominating the handheld marketplace came in 2012 with the PlayStation Vita. The PS Vita featured a 5 OLED multi-touch capacitive touchscreen, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and 3G cellular communication. On paper, the PS Vita is a perfect handheld console, but in reality, it suffered from the evolution in mobile gaming via advancements in smartphone technology. The Vita entered the market too late, and people were less inclined to carry around the console in addition to their readily available phones. It didn't help that the Nintendo 3DS was already dominating the handheld market, or that Sony didn't market it well. Ultimately, the PS Vita was a failure, with only around 16 million units sold. Number 1. Dreamcast. The Dreamcast was the first video game console released in the 6th generation, predating the PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox. The console featured off-the-shelf parts, which helped reduce its production cost while maintaining a high degree of quality. It was called ahead of its time when it was released. Despite these factors, the Dreamcast was a failure for Sega, which was once Nintendo's main competitor. The main reason behind its failure is poor third-party support, weird analog thumbsticks, and no secondary analog. The Dreamcast ended up being the last hardware console Sega developed, leaving the company to refocus its efforts on software development and the licensing of its franchises to other consoles. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing videos. Thank you.